Hi, everybody. Hello, hi. My name's Peter Frankham. I am an independent test and QA consultant. What I'm going to talk to you about this afternoon is the impact of digital on testing. Just a little bit about myself. I've held senior leadership roles in testing for over 20 years now in organizations like IBM, Cable and Wireless, Vodafone in the UK, and latterly I was at Virgin Media in the UK, and also Liberty Global, who I was Director of Test and QA across the 12 countries in Europe in which they operate. And I guess being in IT for so long and being in testing for so long, I've got the benefit of perspective, and I believe quite strongly now that unequivocally testing is going through its biggest change ever, I believe, certainly in a generation. And why is that? Well, I think that that's because of the impact of digital, obviously cloud, data, mobile, IoT. IoT will have a massive impact on testing. Also, the speed in which we are now required to keep up with Agile and DevOps. And also the new tools that you'll have seen around the stands here. If anybody has saw Jeff's presentation earlier, you'll have seen the tools that CA have got around service virtualization. So I think bringing all those things together means that it's going to have a massive impact on the way that testing organizations work. So a lot of this information I'm going to give you is experiential in terms of what I've picked up over the last 7 or 8 years in particular, and I'll show you the transformation that we've been through in Virgin Media and Liberty Global to get to a more digital testing organization. I won't drain this too much because you don't need me to tell you about the impact of digital on IT, but you'll see there that the impact is likely to be significant to the tune of $100 trillion by 2025, and clearly what you're going to get in that situation is you're going to get people who are going to win out of that, and you're going to get people who are not going to be able to keep up. And you know yourself that companies will need to change fundamentally in the way that they interact with customers. And what's very important is that it isn't just about, it is obviously around getting products and services to the customer more quickly, but it's also the quality as well, because you'll have heard that clearly customers are far more choosy in terms of where they can go, and also they're far, far less tolerant around defects in code. And also the organizations that are likely to win out over the next up to 2025 are those ones that will probably have business models that don't even exist at the moment, and are organizations that don't even exist. So the challenge to testing is going to be significant. I think that I've spent quite a lot of years in telco, and traditionally I think telco have used customer information to build better networks. And nowadays, well, people just expect to have a high quality connected service. So that's going to leave the traditional telcos in a difficult position. In the UK, for example, BT, our sort of incumbent telecoms provider, is moving into content. More telcos are moving into IoT as well. But they also come with an old telco mindset. I was reading recently about in India, there's an organization called Reliance Jio that have attracted from the incumbent operators, Airtel and Vodafone, over 10 million customers a month from when they started in September 2016. So, and how did they do that? Well, what they did is they created for their customers a complete digital ecosystem. So everything comes from an app. They're a 4G network. They've obviously made a huge investment in there, but all the services come from the app on the phone. And also a huge barrier for them taking on customers before they started, and this is the one in India, the incumbent customers had, the incumbent telcos had a huge problem, was around the bureaucracy around SIM cards and signing off and going into shops and things like that. And Reliance Jio got around that by challenging the bureaucracy, and now in India people have a digital, like a digital passport, which allows them to be able to sign up to services far, far quicker, and that launched with Reliance Jio. So what they had to do is that they had to build an operation that actually was scaling by over 1 million customers a day. So that's quite, so that's an example of where a disruptive mindset, because clearly the adage here is that if you either have to disrupt or you will be disrupted, and that's particularly relevant in the telco case. And in this with this Reliance Jio example I gave you, they were disruptive into the incumbent operators in India. And I talk about business must transform its IT culture. Well, testing has to transform its culture as well, because with the advent of IoT, clearly for testing, that raises significant security concerns. And how do you test the proliferation of IoT devices that are coming into our everyday lives? Cloud. What's the challenge? The challenges for testing in cloud or around the private cloud, public cloud, the startup of the quick build and tear down of environments in the cloud in order to keep pace with Agile. Mobile, at the moment, there's significant security concerns around mobile. I think something like 80% of organizations believe that they're going to get a threat, a small threat or a bigger threat from mobile from a security perspective. How do you test mobile? How do you cater for all the proliferation of screens and devices that will be coming through? Data, how do you test the significant impact of big data? And how does testing make data relevant so that that you can test data and provision data at speed to keep up with Agile and DevOps? Analytics and AI. I think it's too early right now. We'll talk about AI and the impact of testing on AI in the next couple of slides. But certainly AI will have a big impact on testing. I don't think it's the end of testing. I don't think testing's dead, but testing is certainly going to have to change significantly to keep up with the impacts of digital. And also social. This is about, Jeff said in his presentation this morning, using data in social platforms to really understand the quality and do risk-based analysis on functionality going back into your SDLC from data that currently exists in production, and you're getting customer feedback through social media. So I believe that where organizations are struggling quite a lot at the moment is around how do you, and I've got a world quality report in the next slide that's showing just how difficult it is for testing to keep up with Agile. A lot of DevOps surveys right now are saying that testing in QA is the biggest blocker to development and throughput and agility. So how is testing going to keep up with that? I believe that testing has the opportunity now to be a business enabler. So rather than traditionally that activity that happened at the end, which was always seen to be slow and expensive, now can turn into a real business enabler, because you talk about minimum viable product and you talk about what's the right amount of quality in order to be able to release, and that becomes a real business type of decision. So, and I believe that what we need is a digital test transformation strategy that builds to more distributed quality centers of excellence and transforms into intelligent self-learning. You've heard a lot about continuous testing, and personally I'm a great advocate of continuous testing because it allows testing to be able to have influence right through the delivery life cycle. I've never advocated that testing is that thing traditionally at the end, and it allows testing to be able to have more impact on businesses and through the way that code is developed and deployed. And clearly that testing for functionality, performance testing, a few years ago, performance testing was something that was nice to have on the side, and now it's very much right at the center of everything that we do. When I first started at Virgin Media, I think we had a team of 2 people who sort of did performance testing. We've now got a team of over 30 people, and every single project goes through a performance test analysis. And security testing. We've set up, security testing will continue to have a huge impact on us. We've set up a SAS and DAS service for dynamic and static testing of code within the IDE. And also we're helping out vulnerability testing. And I saw a great demonstration of Veracode, the green light product, where you can move the security testing into the dev domain, and that's a good place for it to start. So I believe testing will come under pressure in the short term because it has to change from the traditional way that it works now into more automated, more intelligent-led service. And that will take some investment to do. And some organizations don't like investment in testing. What they want is they want it to great quality, but they don't want to invest, and they kind of want it for free. So the challenge that testing will have is, how do you implement these intelligent platforms? How do you get great environments and the enablers around environments, service virtualization and test data through things like TDM and SV? How do you build automation if you haven't got automation now? When I was at Virgin Media Liberty Global, it took us a long time to get automation right. We set up disparate automation teams outside of SME lines of business testing teams that we had, and that didn't work very well. Project managers never wanted to invest in automation because they just wanted to release their project into live and didn't care about the future. So we had to get some investment, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. And we have to make sure that everything's going to be an omni experience. So we need to make sure that testing can be able to test across all channels as well, and that's going to be really important. And the best thing to do is to get quality and security owned by everybody. And testing certainly will have to play its part in terms of winning the hearts and minds of people right through from architecture, design, requirements, build, implementation, support, to make sure that security and quality is built into the life cycle. Testing has a big part to play in that. It is other people's responsibility as well, but I believe that testing probably would be the driver for that. If anybody is used to the World Quality Report, it's quite an authoritative report that comes out once a year. It's produced by HP and Capgemini. and I think they go across something like 1,500 CIOs. And what you'll see in a nutshell from there is that there's more problems getting testing to work in Agile in 2016 than there was in 2015, and a significant issue. If you look at the last one, no real difficulties with testing in Agile. Well, in 2016, that was 1%. That's because Agile wasn't so prevalent then, but what's happening now is, what you're seeing now is that obviously DevOps and Agile is more prevalent, and the issues that testing organizations have within the SDLC have become a lot more. So let me just go through these quickly. So you'll see that if we get continuous testing, and if we get our automation right, if we change our skill sets around shifting left and things like that, then that is going to go towards negating some of the problems that you've seen here. But you'll see that, something's going to have to change, because next year you're not going to want to see that much difference in issues from one year to the next in applying testing to Agile developments. So early involvement in testing teams at inception phase. Should testers be involved in Scrum teams? Well, I think the answer is kind of yes and no. I think the answer is that I think testing can advise. I mean, I know some really good developers who are really good at testing, and I know some developers who believe that they shouldn't test at all. So what you're going to do is you're going to get faced with a mixture of people who will sort of buy into the new world, but I don't believe that we should advocate quality to development people alone. I think developers, in terms of playing their role in shifting left and continuous testing, absolutely have a part to play in that. But I think testing has a responsibility to make sure that the hearts and minds and the practice within development and before are changed in order to be able to increase the quality. One of the things that we've put in place at Virgin Media is we put test architects into the design and requirements phase. And these are a few people that are very experienced SME type around the lines of business, who actually know a lot about the implementation environment. They know a lot about the systems under test, because where we've seen issues in the past, where we've got big issues in the past, those issues started in design and fed all the way through development. And then at some point in development, you've got something like that. And that's a big issue. Normally, if you've got defects and the normal type of problems you get in development, you kind of fix it and it comes together. But the big issues around development, the big issues that we've had that really impact some strategic projects have started off in design. So it's about getting the design right. Difficulty in identifying the right areas on which tests should focus. Well, that's a change of the mindset between development and testing, and working more in collaboration. The secret is that testing cannot exist in an island of its own. It has to work more and more with developers, putting best practice into the development space, putting the tools into the development space, and also working at the sprint and implementation stage to make sure that testing is right the way through the Agile and DevOps life cycle. Lack of appropriate test environments and data. Big issue, currently a big issue for everybody. Jeff talked about that this morning. Clearly a strategy around getting test data on demand, getting environments on demand, getting good test data management, or getting test management as a service, as an enabler into efficient testing, has to be in place, because you're only going to be as good as your weakest point. And if you've got a weakest point around there, then that's a real problem. Lack of a good test approach. Again, I think it isn't just about the test approach, it's about the culture of how testing and development teams work together. I think that what I see across organizations is a lot of organizations where there is great practice around Agile and DevOps. And a lot of, I went to a DevOps conference in San Francisco a couple of years ago, and clearly, the Googles and the Netflix and people like that work it really well. But there's an awful lot of organizations that don't get it right at the moment, and that's where I think this turns into an opportunity for test to be able to kind of lead the way. Test automation. So test automation, as I said to you, we've struggled with that. Two reasons. One is we built the Centre of Excellence outside an SME team, and that created a handover point, and that wasn't right. So what you need to do is your testers need to become automation testers. And we've got 500 testers in India. And most, the vast majority of those people want to learn new skills. They want to do smart things. They want to do things better. They want to do it faster. And that's great. So what you do is you bring in the skills and techniques that actually people want to use in their careers as well. So around test automation, it's quite clear now, and also the second problem we had was that we tried to automate the UI, and that's too brittle and changes too much. So what's happening now is and what we've done over the last year or so is really concentrated on API automation. And I think in the future what will happen is that I think somewhere like 80% of testers will become technical AI automation type testers. There will be still a place for manual testing. Manual testing, exploratory testing, being creative, there will still be a place for that, and no amount of AI and automation will change the creativity that humans have, and I don't think quite machines have quite yet. So there will still be a place, but I think at the moment there's so many organizations where it's just about manual testing, huge amount of test scripts, not really knowing where to focus testing on. And that's clearly going to it has changed and will continue to change as well. And I think with model-based testing, scriptless model-based automation, then I think that and the change in culture and the collaboration, the difficulties that testing will have in Agile will hopefully get better. But testing has to, it's going through significant change right now, and I believe that testing has to change. In some organization, like I say, it's great. There's a load of good stuff right now around model-based automation, continuous testing, and if we embrace that, then the gap and the issues faced by applying testing in Agile development or DevOps will recede, I'm sure. This is just a slide that I put together to show the journey that I guess I've been on over the last 5 years in terms of how we've transformed our testing function. This is at scale as well. It's important for you to know that, I guess, in theory, if you've got a smaller team, potentially your ability to be able to sort things will improve. We started off with about 350 testers in 2012, and that grew to about 500 testers in 2016 and 17. I think what's important as well is that if you come from an organization that has a managed service test, I assume that a lot of organizations have managed test services. We do. We use Accenture, we use CA, and we use the tools on here. We're a big partner with CA as well, but our test organization is based out of Pune in India. It's about 80-20, and I think there's a couple of important things to note. One is this is a scaled transformation, and I think when I was writing this, it's important to know that if you're involved in the leadership of this sort of transformation, change the contract as well, because it's the contract that we have right now with Accenture isn't reflective of the last 3 years of innovation and transformation. So what you have then is a situation where your strategy's moving, you're bringing in the tools, but there may be commercial reasons why your vendor doesn't want to move as quickly as you would like to. So it's very important that you know, that I would say every 2 years, you've got to have a look at your contract and make sure that your contract incentivizes your managed service supplier to work in the way that you want to. Okay, so if this situation right now, I would incentivize a managed service supplier to do continuous testing. Okay, I would continue to do model-based testing. I would tell them that they have to set up a CA, TDM, and SV service, enabler service with SLAs and things like that. Let me just go through this. So back into and also what has changed is that you'll see that we have gone through standardization, we've gone through the cost effectiveness, and it's all about delivery quality now. I remember times when quality was, if you look at the, most of life is based on time, cost, and quality. And in the past, quality has been an issue. And if I had a vendor come to me and say, I can do your testing great, quality won't be a problem, then they won't get much time, because quality is now nailed. That's not an issue. If you've got a vendor that doesn't do a good job on quality, then I'd recommend you replace them. Then at the beginning, what we then did, then it was around efficiency. So it is around what we did in 2012. We transformed from a team of 230 contract and permanent staff and moved that to an offshore testing center of excellence, and set up standardization around environments, we used HP Quality Center, and we started doing performance testing better as well as a service. And that was really that was really done to just reduce cost and standardize the service, so it was a consistent customer experience. Then once we'd done that, it was about, well, how does that become more efficient? So we had to set up services as enablers into testing, like service virtualization, like test data management, monitoring. We started our sort of form of early shifting left, which was around static analysis, looking at requirements, and making doing a static analysis to make sure that the requirements were right. And we brought in Perfecto and Storm Test to do our TV and mobile testing as well. And then around about 2014, it was around about innovation. How do we drive innovation in order to be able to starting to do things quicker? We brought in Source Labs to do our cross-browser testing. We started doing quality management. What we found is that gates between design requirements into test, that's where we would find communication and collaboration issues. So we got a kind of quality management stream there. We formalized risk-based testing, because we basically said to the product owners and the project managers, we can do this much testing, it'll cost you this much, or we can do less testing, higher risk, and it'll cost you less. You choose. And therefore, we were then very transparent and very good around the communication in terms of the risk. Because if you're in testing, you never have enough time to test. And then we started to really push on test automation as well, to the extent now that 80% of our regression testing is automated, but we're starting to use more model-based testing, and clearly the goal over this year and into next year will be 80% of all of our testing automated. We've also been part of a wider team that has built up DevOps capabilities and agile test capabilities as well, because what was happening is that we were finding that there wasn't a consistent approach to Agile and DevOps in our organization, and therefore we were then at the behest of suppliers having their own way of being able to do Agile and DevOps, and people coming up to me saying, oh, we don't need testers anymore because we're Agile. And also the business saying things like, we want you to do, I've read that Agile is the way to go, we want you to be Agile. And then if there's technology problems, then it's a problem with the technology. So what we wanted to do is try and build the kind of the future into our own hands in terms of being able to build our Agile and DevOps test capabilities. So we brought in Jenkins for automation. We brought in Dynatrace for APM. We set up and we extended more CA's service virtualization, and I think that and test data management. And I think we will consolidate and look at things like certainly look at BlazeMeter for performance testing as well, and start moving towards more consolidated tools. But also, as Jeff said this morning as well, about using open source as well. We will use open source as well. We're starting to do some analytics in AI. We've written some algorithms. We've got hundreds of thousands of defects and test cases in HP Quality Center, and we're starting to use that data to be able to predict better how we do our testing based on coverage, and also about looking at defects. And if we raise defects now, using AI to be able to say, have we had previous defects in the past like this? And also with our innovation and moving very much more into DevOps and Agile, we're very keen to be able to report and be able to have KPIs that really drive the right behavior and drive improvements into that space. So I guess that's what we've done over the last 5 years. I think the key points from that is, if you're transforming at scale and you've got a managed service supplier, make sure you incentivize through your relationship and your contract with those suppliers to make sure that your transformation activities and where you want to get to are aligned. We own the strategy for testing. I think that's important. I think that we have a small quality center of excellence that owns the strategy, because our tool provider, our managed service provider could change, but our strategy shouldn't change. And very much so now, everything that we're doing is around speed to market. It's around how do we keep up with Agile and DevOps. So just on that point then, what are the opportunities for testing? As I said at the beginning of my presentation, testing has to embrace new digital skills and capabilities, okay? It has to have, just as much as telcos have to become digital enterprising, testing has to be a digital organization to support digital capabilities and all the tooling and all the best practice that goes with that, okay? we're moving from a centralized testing center of excellence to a more distributed quality center of excellence. I think there's a good nuance between testing and quality. Quality for me means more holistic involvement of testing and quality right across the life cycle. And I think distributed's really important, because I think gone for us are the days of having a large central team. We want to have a centralized function, quite thin, that looks after governance and standards and tooling, but to be distributed across lines of business so that you have testers build up the skills. Because I think where testing can add to the business enablement and the business being a real business enabler is to have quality testers with good business skills and good technical quality skills to come together to make those decisions, okay? Tools and automation, I've talked about that. I think the future for testing is 80% automation, 20% manual exploratory creative testing, and automation will move into AI in time, because the deterministic aspects and the repetitive aspects of testing very much lends itself to AI. And I think when we're back here next year, I think AI will just become more and more of a theme. Continuous testing, shifting left and right. Like I say, don't work in that silo of, we develop something and then we test it. Testing has to change in order to be able to be in the design, in the requirements, influencing quality into development teams. Developers will do more testing, and that's the right thing. But I think that testing has a responsibility to make sure that it's good testing, and that there's a certain QA function of the development testing in the IDE. Shifting left, shifting right. So we've recently set up a service because we could do great testing and then we'd have issues around deployment, or we'd have issues around integration. So we've shifted right to make sure that we do a risk analysis of the deployment and helping out the testing in the deployment. And then, as I said, shifting right into the production space to understand, to take more of a risk-based approach back into your testing of the functionality that's used, feedback from social media platforms to make sure the good stuff and the stuff that isn't working around your app or your functionality. And I'm a great believer in having smooth enablements to testing through, because as I say, testing is only as good as everything else that supports it. So you have to have on-demand test environment management, and CA that we saw with Jeff in the presentation this morning around the products that CA have around TDM, service virtualization, and there's open source products and there's other products that do that, but you have to set up test enablement functions to be able to provide you with that testing efficiency. So I'm probably repeating myself a little bit here. In order for testing to match and align with DevOps and Agile and do speed with quality, we need to embrace digital and implement continuous testing. Drive predictive analysis. Use your test data as much as you can to drive predictive analysis, and embrace AI, where AI will be the next automation. And we've gone from scripted to model-based automation, and we've seen significant advantages in doing that. Build intelligent cloud test platforms and deploy digital test tools. And also, I think what's really important is make quality. I think the testing organizations can make their lives a lot easier if they make quality and security everybody's responsibility, and not just leave it for somebody else to get it right. I think there's a very proactive responsibility and action that testing needs to do to be able to win the hearts and minds of people upstream, to make sure that quality and security is bedded into the SDLC. So I think that, it's pretty much finished up there now. I think that, like I say, a lot of the practice that you would have heard around here today, around continuous testing, around shift left, that's right. You know, I mean, there's, you know, as I said to you, I've been in testing for 20 years, and continuous testing, the tooling, you know, in some ways it's never been better for testing, for tooling, for the impact that testing and quality can have, because, you know, with the impact of digital and the need to be able to serve the customer both in products and services, and the customer experience is predicated on getting what they want, but getting it right as well, both in terms of the way it functions and the way that it performs, and to make sure it's secure as well. And testing plays a huge part in that. So I think it's a great time for testing. I think that if you're willing to adapt your skills, if you're a tester, if you're willing to adapt your skills into more forms of automation and AI, and you understand that this is what the challenges will be, then it's a great time to be around right now.